Hello everyone, this is Six Path Weeb, and welcome back to the channel. Today, we're diving into Naruko, the Fox of Wit, Part 2, continuing the story where sharp minds meet untamed spirit. Disclaimer, the content on this channel is purely for entertainment and discussion purposes. I do not own any of the anime footage featured here, all rights and credits belong to their respective creators and copyright holders. Alright then, let's jump right into it. Time skip, 2 years. Naruko sat quietly at the back of the classroom, her bright blue eyes focused on the book in her hands. This had become a familiar sight, one her classmates had grown used to. Seeing Naruko reading was as natural as seeing her wear her favorite orange outfit or greet everyone with her cheerful smile. Ever since her friend Rika had helped her discover the wonderful world of books, Naruko had gained a deeper appreciation for learning. Though she was still known for her energetic and playful nature, the knowledge she had gathered from reading made her more thoughtful and capable. Her classmates had begun to view her with newfound respect. Over time, Naruko had improved in many areas. Her housekeeping skills had become impressive. She now kept her home neat and cozy, complete with a few potted plants that brightened her space. She had also discovered a love for cooking and gardening. Naruko often tried new recipes, proudly serving her creations to Iruka-sensei and the Ichiraku family, who always complimented her dishes warmly. Working part-time at Ichiraku's ramen stand had deepened her passion for the culinary arts. She even began growing her own herbs on her balcony, using seeds she had bought from a traveling merchant. But among all her skills, the one that had grown the most was her talent as a young ninja. Through constant reading and practice, Naruko's understanding of survival and strategy had increased greatly. She had learned several practical techniques, such as creating safe campfires and purifying water with chakra. She also enjoyed games like shogi and go, which helped her learn the art of strategy and planning. Her chakra control, while still not perfect, had improved remarkably. Knowing that she needed to master 3 specific techniques to graduate from the academy, Naruko had spent years practicing them. She could now perform the substitution jutsu with ease, and her transformation jutsu had become quite impressive. She often showed great creativity in how she used it. However, one jutsu still troubled her deeply, the clone jutsu. No matter how hard she tried or how many books she studied, Naruko simply couldn't get it right. It wasn't for lack of effort, she just felt that something wasn't clicking. Normally, Naruko preferred solving her problems on her own, but after many attempts, she decided to seek advice from someone she deeply trusted, the third Hokage. "Ah, Naruko, come in," said the elderly Hokage kindly as he welcomed her into his office. Naruko stepped forward, nervously clutching the hem of her jacket. "So, Naruko," the Hokage began gently, "what can I help you with today?" Naruko hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath. "Well, Grandpa Hokage," she began in her usual cheerful tone, "I've been working really hard on a certain jutsu, but no matter what I do, I just can't get it right. I've read everything I could find, even borrowed books from Rika and Iruka-sensei, but it still doesn't work." Her expression turned frustrated. "I've practiced chakra control every day. I can even run laps around the training ground with leaves stuck to me. But this jutsu just won't cooperate." The Hokage chuckled softly at her determination. Now, Naruko. Don't get too upset. Tell me what technique you're having trouble with, and I'll see if I can help." "It's the clone jutsu, Grandpa," she said with a sigh. The Hokage smiled kindly. "Ah, I see. Why don't you show me what you can do?" Naruko nodded and performed the hand signs. A faint copy of herself appeared beside her, looking rather wobbly and faint. The Hokage examined it thoughtfully. I understand," he said, walking to his bookshelf. He selected a scroll and began writing on it as he spoke. "However, I don't believe the issue lies in your chakra control, Naruko." Naruko tilted her head. "Then what's the problem?" He smiled knowingly. "Your chakra reserves are simply too large for this basic technique. You have so much energy that controlling a tiny portion of it precisely enough for the clone jutsu becomes difficult." Naruko blinked, then brightened. "So that means I have a lot of chakra?" "Exactly," the Hokage confirmed with a nod. "And because of that, I have something special that might suit you better." He finished writing and handed her the scroll. "Inside this scroll is a more advanced form of the clone jutsu. I believe this version will work perfectly for you." Naruko's eyes sparkled with excitement as she accepted the scroll. "Thank you so much, Grandpa Hokage," she exclaimed joyfully. The Hokage chuckled warmly, then grew a little more serious. "You must promise me one thing, Naruko. Don't teach this technique to anyone else, all right? It's a very special jutsu, and not everyone can handle it safely. Naruko straightened up and saluted. I promise. I won't show anyone. Good, said the Hokage, his kind eyes softening. And once you've learned it, please return the scroll to me. It's important that it remains safe. Deal. Naruko replied, determination glowing in her voice. The Hokage smiled proudly. Excellent. Now go on, I know you'll do great. Naruko grinned and hurried off, excitement bubbling in her chest. She couldn't wait to master her new jutsu and show everyone just how far she had come. The final academy spar. Ever since that day, even though Naruko had struggled to master a simple clone technique, she had become remarkably skilled at performing the shadow clone jutsu. One afternoon during training, she decided to truly challenge herself and see how many clones she could create at once. To her amazement, the entire practice field soon filled with identical versions of herself. To say she was astonished would be an understatement. Okay, class. Iruka called out, gathering everyone's attention. Today will be your final sparring session before the Jinan exams. Please make your way to the training grounds behind the academy in an orderly fashion. The moment Naruko heard the word sparring session, her bright blue eyes instinctively darted towards Sasuke. His dark eyes met hers for a brief, silent moment before both turned away and headed for the field. If this was going to be their last practice match before the exams, Naruko was determined to make it memorable. All right, everyone, Iruka continued, holding up a sheet of paper. You'll each be paired with a partner. The list is here, come take a look and then find a space to spar. You have 3 minutes. Begin. Students hurried to check their names. When Naruko finally found hers, she saw it listed next to Sasuke's. Perfect, she thought with a small, confident smile. Sasuke glanced her way, already understanding without a word, and walked to an open area of the training ground. Naruko followed, and the two positioned themselves a few meters apart, close enough to engage, yet far enough to move freely. My last academy spar, and I'm paired with you again, Sasuke said calmly, his tone even but carrying a trace of anticipation. Naruko's grin widened, excitement lighting up her face. I'm not complaining, she replied cheerfully. Over the past 2 years, Naruko and Sasuke had developed a quiet respect for one another. Naruko had started training with far more dedication, studying techniques and pushing her limits. Their sparring sessions, once one-sided, had grown increasingly balanced and competitive. Hajime. Iruka called out, signaling the start of all matches. Naruko and Sasuke stood still for a brief moment, each reading the other's intent. Then Sasuke broke the silence. Try to make this interesting, he said coolly. Naruko's smile turned playful. Don't worry, I plan to. With that, she dashed forward, meeting Sasuke halfway. Their fists met with a sharp thump, each blocking and striking in perfect rhythm. The impact was enough to draw the attention of nearby students, who soon paused their own matches to watch. Iruka sighed softly, a knowing smile on his face. I should have expected this, he thought. Still, he couldn't help but admire their determination as he moved closer to observe. Sasuke quickly regained his footing and charged again, throwing a swift punch aimed at Naruko's shoulder. But Naruko recovered just as fast. With smooth precision, she grasped Sasuke's arm, pivoted, and redirected his motion, sending him tumbling safely to the ground with a soft thud. Sasuke exhaled sharply, momentarily winded, before rising back to his feet. His dark eyes locked on Naruko's, reflecting a mix of focus and mild frustration. I can't believe you fell for that again, Naruko teased lightly, her voice full of playful energy. Sasuke gave a quiet sigh in return but couldn't hide the small, determined smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. The rivalry between them was fierce, but respectful. And as the afternoon sun glowed over the academy grounds, their spar continued, two young shinobi in training pushing each other toward greatness. Naruko versus Sasuke, the sparring match. The two young ninjas stood face to face, determination shining in their eyes. Each felt confident in their own abilities, despite the fact that their past matches had often ended the same way. Get ready, Sasuke. This time, I'm going to surprise you. Naruko called out from across the training field. Sasuke gave a quiet hum of acknowledgement, brushing off the spirited challenge with his usual calm expression. The signal to begin was given. In an instant, Sasuke launched forward, moving with impressive speed as he aimed a precise strike toward Naruko. Yet, something unexpected occurred. Before his attack could land, Naruko's hand swiftly intercepted his movement, one grasping his wrist, the other catching his arm. With a fluid motion, she redirected his momentum, sending him tumbling harmlessly onto the ground. Before Sasuke could fully process what had happened, Naruko had already stepped back, ready for the next move. As Sasuke rose to his feet, he focused intently on his opponent. Naruko's bright blue eyes gleamed with determination, and a confident smile curved her lips. Around them, several classmates had stopped their own practice to watch. Even their instructor looked astonished, his expression revealing both surprise and admiration. After all, no one in their class had ever managed to land a clean move against Sasuke, until now. And the fact that it was Naruko, once considered the least likely to win a spar, made the moment even more remarkable. Sasuke dusted himself off and returned to his stance, narrowing his eyes. He studied Naruko carefully, realizing that her posture was different from the standard academy style. Still, he brushed off the thought. Perhaps she had simply improvised. One lucky move wouldn't happen twice, he told himself. Determined to even the score, Sasuke rushed forward once again. But by the end of that sparring session, the result had stunned everyone watching. Naruko had won. For weeks afterward, many students claimed it was just a coincidence, something that couldn't be repeated. But no matter what they said, it remained Naruko Uzumaki's victory. Joy bubbled through Naruko as she stood proudly in the center of the training ground. Sasuke, on the other hand, sat quietly on the ground, still processing what had happened. When he finally looked up, Naruko was smiling down at him, her cheerful expression unshaken. Extending a hand, she helped him up with genuine warmth. Sasuke accepted the gesture silently, resolving that he would never underestimate Naruko again. From that day on, their training duels became much closer. Eventually, curiosity got the better of Sasuke. During one of their matches, he asked about the unique movements she had been using. To his surprise, Naruko actually answered honestly. She explained that she had discovered her fighting style in an old book from the village library. She admitted that traditional taijutsu forms didn't suit her very well, so she studied various styles, the Goken, the Hyuga clan's gentle fist, and even the Uchiha clan's intercepting fist. Still, none of them felt quite right. Then, while exploring the library shelves, Naruko had come across a worn-out volume describing a technique called the crashing wave style. Inspired by the flowing motion of water, it focused on evading and redirecting attacks smoothly before countering with precision and strength, much like a wave crashing against the shore. Naruko had practiced diligently, adapting the movements to suit her own rhythm. Though she wasn't yet a master, her efforts allowed her to hold her own against even the most talented students, including Sasuke himself. And from that day forward, every spar between them was not just a match, but a friendly challenge, a symbol of how far they had both come. The sparring match. It was Naruko's turn now. She dashed toward Sasuke in a way that mirrored his earlier attack. The Uchiha stood his ground, patiently waiting for her next move. Naruko feinted a cross strike before attempting to sweep at his leg. Sasuke anticipated it and lifted his foot just in time, countering with a quick kick toward Naruko's midsection. She twisted gracefully, narrowly avoiding the full force of the blow. Using the moment to her advantage, Naruko spun and struck with the back of her hand, catching Sasuke by surprise and making him take a step back. Not one to hesitate, she moved in again, attempting a right hook, but Sasuke swiftly blocked with his forearm. Naruko's stance opened slightly, and Sasuke took the opportunity to land a precise strike that pushed her backward. He followed up with a quick side kick that sent her sliding a short distance across the sparring field. Despite the momentum against her, Naruko managed to steady herself and stand tall again. Sasuke pressed forward with rapid punches and quick footwork, keeping Naruko on the defensive. She dodged and blocked, determined not to give in. Just as Sasuke aimed another punch toward her, Naruko ducked under his arm, closing the distance in an unexpected move. With a burst of energy, she dashed forward and gently but firmly tackled Sasuke, making him stumble back with a surprised expression. "Not bad," Sasuke muttered, adjusting his footing. He rushed in once more. Naruko, still a little dizzy from her quick maneuver, reacted instinctively with a high roundhouse kick. Sasuke grinned at her attempt, dropped low, and swept her supporting leg with a precise motion. Naruko lost her balance, but before she could rise again, Sasuke lightly placed a knee on her chest to hold her still, just enough to signal victory. Iruka, their instructor, stepped forward and raised his hand. "Match over. Winner, Sasuke Uchiha," he announced warmly. The class cheered as Sasuke stood and offered Naruko a hand to help her up. She accepted it with a smile, brushing some dust off her sleeve. The two exchanged their traditional friendship gesture before walking back to the group together. Naruko couldn't deny feeling a hint of disappointment. She had hoped to win her final academy spar against Sasuke. Still, she knew deep down that he had the edge this time. There was always room for improvement, and she was determined to keep growing stronger. If there was one thing she had learned from Rika and the Ichiraku family, it was humility. Naruko had confidence in her skills but also understood that there would always be others who could teach her something new. Instead of boasting, she now focused on proving herself through dedication and hard work. The day before the exam. Once Iruka led the class back to their room, everyone took their usual seats. Naruko headed to her familiar spot at the very back. It had long been known as her place ever since the class Naruko incident that no one dared repeat. "Alright, everyone," Iruka began with a proud smile, "tomorrow is the big day. The day you all demonstrate what you've learned here. This test isn't just about skills, it's about showing that you have the heart and spirit of true protectors of our village. You've all worked hard, and I'm proud of each of you. Get a good rest tonight and do your best tomorrow." The students responded enthusiastically before Iruka dismissed them. Naruko had the next day off from helping at Ichiraku Ramen, so she decided to take it easy. Thanks to Rika's tutoring, her confidence was higher than ever. A year and a half ago, she had started seeking extra help whenever she struggled with her studies, and it had made a big difference. Her grades had steadily improved, and though she wasn't at the top of the class, she was proud to no longer be at the very bottom. Ayame had once advised her, "Training hard is good, Naruko, but don't forget that rest is just as important." Taking that advice to heart, Naruko decided today would be a calm day to recharge before the exam. She stopped by the library to borrow a few books, a light fiction novel and one about the history of the previous Hokage. "If I'm going to become Hokage one day," she thought with a grin, "I'd better study the best." Rika wasn't working that day, which was a bit disappointing since Naruko enjoyed chatting with her, but she didn't mind. She took the scenic route home, walking over the Hokage monument as the sun painted the village in warm golden hues. The gentle breeze brushed against her face, and she felt peaceful. The books in her arms were a comfortable weight, grounding her in the moment. By the time she reached her apartment, the sky had deepened into a soft orange glow. Her home, once messy and cluttered, was now neat and cozy, a change Rika had insisted on during one of her visits. "Now it looks like a proper home," Rika had said with approval. Naruko smiled at the memory, set her books neatly on the handmade shelf Tucci had helped her build, and headed to the kitchen. She tied on her black apron and washed her hands before beginning dinner. Following a recipe from her favorite cookbook, she prepared a colorful vegetable stir-fry with a light savory aroma that filled the room. When she finished, Naruko neatly folded her apron, cleaned up, and stepped onto her balcony to water her plants. The night sky sparkled with stars, and a cool breeze flowed through the air, refreshing her spirit. "Tomorrow," she whispered to herself, "is the start of something new. The day I begin my journey as a true ninja. And my first step toward becoming Hokage." With that hopeful thought, Naruko went inside, read for a while, then enjoyed a warm shower before heading to bed. She fell asleep peacefully, dreaming of adventure and the bright future that awaited her. The next morning, Naruko woke up bright and early. She smiled as she stepped out of her room, feeling fresh and ready to start the day. After a nice shower and getting dressed, she decided it was time for breakfast. Her choice was simple yet satisfying, a traditional Japanese breakfast of miso soup, rice, and a few small side dishes. Once she had finished eating, she set off toward the academy, her heart filled with excitement. As usual, she arrived before anyone else. Her eyes wandered across the empty classroom, and a small, playful urge sparked inside her. It was her final day at the academy, and the thought of pulling one last harmless prank was tempting. Still, she decided to wait. She wanted to celebrate properly after passing her exams. That would be the perfect time for a fun surprise. Naruko sat at her desk and opened her favorite book, The Tale of an Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. It was one of the first books she had ever borrowed from the library. Miss Rika had kindly allowed her to keep it since it was an old copy the library no longer needed. Naruko was grateful. The book had become one of her treasures, especially since she shared a name with the main character. As she read the familiar words once again, Naruko's mind drifted back to her past. She realized just how much she had grown over the past 2 years. She was still energetic and mischievous at times, but she had learned to be more thoughtful and focused. While she still enjoyed the occasional prank, they were now lighthearted and never disruptive. Naruko paid better attention in class too, at least most of the time. Iruka-sensei's lectures could sometimes sound repetitive to her, but she respected him deeply. Outside of class, Naruko continued her training diligently, though she had learned to do so in a healthier and more balanced way. She understood now that pushing herself too hard wasn't the best way to improve. Her diet had also changed. Though she still loved ramen, she only ate it twice a week, exploring other foods and learning to cook new dishes. With Iruka-sensei's gentle encouragement, she had added more vegetables to her meals, which made her stronger and healthier. Over the past 2 years, Naruko had made a few acquaintances. While she wasn't sure they were close friends yet, she enjoyed spending time with them. Kiba and his loyal dog Akamaru were always full of energy. Kiba reminded her a lot of herself, confident, bold, and full of dreams about becoming a hero. Akamaru, meanwhile, was just as spirited and loyal as his partner. Then there was Shikamaru Nara, the most relaxed person Naruko had ever met. He often called things too troublesome, but Naruko had quickly realized he was incredibly intelligent. Whenever she asked him something, he always seemed to know the answer. When she asked how he knew so much, he simply shrugged and said, "I just happen to overhear things." Naruko decided that he was a quiet genius who preferred to take life easy. Her third companion in mischief was Choji Akimichi, who loved his snacks and was rarely seen without a bag of chips. Naruko liked him because he was kind and never said anything hurtful. One day, he told her how he and Shikamaru became friends. They both walked away from a group of kids who were being unkind to others, choosing instead to spend time together watching clouds and sharing snacks. Naruko could relate to that feeling of being left out, and she told Choji that she, too, had often been excluded by other children. In response, Choji smiled and shared his chips with her. It was a simple gesture, but to Naruko, it meant more than words could express. In those 2 years, Naruko's appearance had changed as well. Thanks to her healthier lifestyle, she had grown taller and looked stronger. She wasn't bulky, but she had a lean, healthy build that suited her active nature. Her wardrobe had also become more practical. Iruka-sensei had gently pointed out that bright orange wasn't the best choice for stealth, so Naruko had agreed to try darker colors for her missions. She now wore comfortable dark cargo pants and shirts that allowed easy movement. Still, she couldn't part with her favorite jacket. She now wore it open, sleeves rolled up just above her elbows. As Naruko sat quietly, she heard footsteps approaching. Her classmates were beginning to arrive. Shino, Ino, and Sakura came in first, each greeting the morning in their own way. Shino nodded politely at Naruko before taking his seat. Naruko always found Shino mysterious, but she respected his calm nature. When Ino and Sakura entered, they were chatting animatedly and didn't notice her right away. Naruko had long outgrown her childhood crush on Sakura. When Sakura realized that Naruko no longer admired her that way, she had asked about it. Naruko explained gently that she had mistaken admiration for affection. After reading a few romance stories Miss Rika recommended, Naruko understood that true friendship was more important to her. Sakura appreciated her honesty, and they agreed to be friends. Since then, they occasionally exchanged books and friendly smiles. They weren't especially close, but they respected and understood each other, and for Naruko, that was enough. The final academy test. Before long, every student had arrived, and the classroom was filled with eager faces, each ready to take their final examination. Iruka entered the room with a welcoming smile and greeted everyone warmly. "All right, everyone, please take your seats," he called from the front. The students quickly settled down, their excitement and nervousness filling the air. Unlike their usual lessons, there were no exercises to test focus today. It was clear why. "As you all know," Iruka began, "today marks your final academy exam. You have each worked diligently to reach this moment, and as your sensei, I am extremely proud of your dedication and growth. Before we begin, I would like to share a few words." He paused, letting his kind gaze travel across the room before continuing. "Over the years, I've had the great honor of being your instructor. I've watched you grow from young children into talented, determined future ninja. Regardless of the outcome today, remember this: if you do your best, you have already succeeded. You are all winners in my eyes. Now, let's begin. The first to take the test will be Hinata Hyuga." The class waited quietly as Hinata stepped into the examination room. Moments later, she returned with a bright smile and a blue headband proudly tied around her neck. Cheers and congratulations filled the room before Iruka called the next name. One by one, students took their turns, each emerging either with a victorious smile or a thoughtful look of determination for the next attempt. Finally, it was Naruko's turn. Iruka called her name, and as she stood, Choji gave her an encouraging thumbs up. Naruko smiled confidently, giving a small salute before walking into the examination room. Inside, she found 3 instructors waiting, including Iruka-sensei himself. "All right, Naruko," Iruka said gently. To pass, you need to perform the 3 Academy Jutsu successfully. Your physical and written exams were excellent, so this is your final step. Do your best. Naruko nodded eagerly, determination shining in her bright blue eyes. Please begin with the transformation technique, said one of the examiners. Naruko grinned slightly. This was one of her favorite jutsu, even though she had struggled with it in the past. Remembering Irika's advice, to focus and channel her energy calmly, she centered herself. Gathering her chakra, she formed the required hand seals, and with a puff of white smoke, her figure transformed into a perfect likeness of the 4th Hokage, her lifelong hero. Iruka smiled proudly. Excellent work, he said, before turning to the next task. Now, please demonstrate the replacement technique. Naruko nodded and focused again. In an instant, she exchanged places with a chair in the corner of the room. The instructors exchanged approving glances, and Iruka gave another encouraging nod. And finally, he said, show us your clone technique. Naruko clasped her hands together and channeled her chakra with precision. With a burst of energy, 4 identical clones appeared beside her, each mirroring her triumphant grin. Irika's smile widened. Well done, Naruko. You've passed. Yada. Naruko cheered joyfully, her clones echoing her excitement before disappearing with soft puffs of smoke. All right, that's enough, Naruko, Iruka said with a gentle laugh. You can choose your headband from the table over there. Naruko stepped over and selected one with the traditional blue fabric, tying it proudly across her forehead. Her heart swelled with pride. She had finally become a Leaf Village ninja. When she returned to the classroom, her friends, Sakura, Choji, and even Hinata, were smiling at her. Her eyes briefly met Sasuke's, who wore his own headband. For a brief moment, their gazes held before he looked away toward the window. Naruko chuckled softly, understanding the unspoken message. Good job, but I'll still stay ahead. Shaking her head in amusement, she returned to her seat, her confidence soaring. When all the students had completed their tests, Iruka stood once again at the front of the room. Every student now wore a headband, a sign of their accomplishment. Everyone, take a good look around, Iruka began. These are your future comrades, the people who will stand beside you in missions and in life. Remember each face you see, for together you form the new generation of Leaf Village Ninja. Carry the will of fire proudly within your hearts and protect the peace of our village. A wave of pride and unity swept through the classroom. The students sat up straighter, their hearts full of determination and excitement for what lay ahead. You are all officially Jinan now, Iruka announced. Come back tomorrow for team placements and to meet your new instructors. Congratulations, everyone, you've earned it. With that, the students began to leave, chatting excitedly among themselves. Naruko was one of the last to walk out. As she stepped outside, she glanced back at the academy, a fond smile crossing her face. Memories of her struggles and perseverance filled her thoughts. Once, she had been a clumsy, uncertain girl, but now, she was a proud kunoichi of the Hidden Leaf. Feeling both nostalgic and inspired, Naruko turned toward her next destination, Ichiraku Ramen. The scent of warm broth and noodles awaited her, along with dreams of the many adventures to come. With a smile, she took off down the street, her new headband gleaming in the sunlight, ready to face whatever the future held. Naruko's morning of mischief. Naruko stood before her mirror, carefully adjusting her outfit. She wore her usual attire, though today she added a new accessory, a slightly worn orange neck sash tied loosely around her neck. She smiled warmly as she remembered how she had received it. A kind traveler had once given it to her while she was helping out at the local ramen stand. As Naruko had eagerly spoken about her dream of becoming a ninja and going on grand adventures, the traveler listened with amusement. When she finished, he untied the sash from his own neck and handed it to her with a nostalgic smile. This sash has accompanied me through many journeys, he had said thoughtfully. My adventures have come to an end, but yours are just beginning. Perhaps this little token will bring you good fortune on the path ahead. Naruko had accepted the gift gratefully, promising to treasure it. The traveler gave a cheerful nod, finished his meal, and left with a simple farewell that Naruko would never forget. She had kept the sash safe until now, deciding she would only wear it once she was officially a ninja, when her real adventures could truly begin. But before that, Naruko thought with a playful grin, turning away from the mirror to glance at a small pile of supplies on her bed, there's one more thing I have to do. Gathering the items, she leapt gracefully out the open window. An hour later, joyful laughter echoed through the village as Naruko admired her latest prank. The faces of all the Hokage carved into the village monument had been humorously decorated with bright colors and silly expressions. The fourth's face, however, was painted with yellow hair and whisker-like marks that resembled Naruko herself. At the top of the monument, in bold orange letters, was written, "Long live the Queen of Pranks." Naruko giggled proudly before hurrying off toward the academy. When she entered the classroom, she was, as usual, the first to arrive. But unlike other days, she didn't have to wait long before her classmates began filing in. Some whispered playfully about the prank, calling it mischievous yet impressive. Others grinned and gave Naruko cheerful high fives, amazed that she had managed to decorate the entire monument without being caught. Though everyone suspected she was behind it, Naruko only smiled and said innocently, "I have no idea what you're talking about." Kiba, clearly wishing he could have joined in, asked excitedly, "Come on, how did you do it?" Naruko winked. "Even if I were the Queen of Pranks, I'd never reveal my secrets." Kiba laughed heartily and went to take his seat. When Sakura saw Naruko, she sighed in exasperation. "You really shouldn't have done that, Naruko. You could get into serious trouble." "Are you accusing me of something, Sakura-chan?" "I'm deeply offended," Naruko said dramatically, pretending to clutch her heart. Sakura frowned. "You always take things too lightly. And you worry too much," Naruko replied cheerfully. "Besides, if I were the one who did it, the worst that would happen is some community service." Sakura simply shook her head and went to her seat, muttering something about Naruko never changing. Soon, everyone who had passed the Jinan exams was in the room, and Iruka entered shortly afterward. He glanced toward Naruko with a knowing look but said nothing. She exhaled in relief, realizing how close she might have come to getting into real trouble. "All right, everyone," Iruka announced, "I'm here to announce your team placements. Let's get started." As he began reading the names, Naruko looked around at her classmates, some excited, others anxious. She didn't mind much who she would be teamed with, she only hoped they could work together peacefully. Team 7, Iruka declared, will consist of Sakura Haruno, Naruko Uzumaki. Naruko smiled at Sakura, who returned the gesture with a small wave. And Sasuke Uchiha. Sakura immediately jumped up in excitement while the other girls groaned in disappointment. "You're so lucky, Sakura," Ino called out. Sakura beamed proudly. "Guess it's destiny." Sasuke, however, seemed uninterested. He turned to glance at Naruko, who smiled awkwardly at the scene. After a moment, he looked away with a quiet sigh. "Just don't slow me down," he said coolly. Naruko rolled her eyes but chose not to respond. Iruka continued, "Team 8 will consist of Hinata Hyuga, Kiba Inuzuka, and Shino Aburame. Team 10 will be Shikamaru Nara, Ino Yamanaka, and Choji Akimichi. Team 9 remains active, so that concludes the assignments." He folded his papers neatly. "You are all dismissed for lunch. Afterward, meet your new teammates for further instructions from your assigned mentors." The classroom filled with chatter as students left eagerly for lunch. Naruko, however, chose to go to the rooftop, her favorite quiet spot. She sat with her back against the railing, enjoying the gentle breeze while snacking on treats she had tucked inside her jacket. Normally, Shikamaru would have joined her to admire the clouds, but today he and Choji had other plans. Naruko smiled softly to herself, gazing at the sky above. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "the real adventure begins." As the final minutes of the lunch break began to slip away, Naruko Uzumaki closed her book, tucked it neatly into her pocket, and began making her way back toward the classroom. Descending the stairs from the rooftop, she noticed a faint hint of purple disappearing around a nearby corner. Curious, Naruko raised an eyebrow and called out softly, "Hello?" There was no reply, but the color vanished in a quick flickering motion. Deciding to investigate, Naruko quickened her pace and turned the corner, only to spot a girl wearing a large cream-colored jacket and sporting distinctive indigo hair. She seemed startled, as though caught off guard. "Hinata?" Naruko asked, recognizing her classmate instantly. She had made it a goal to remember every future clan head in her class. Shikamaru once pointed out that it was almost too coincidental that all of them had ended up in the same academy year, a detail Naruko had never forgotten. Hinata's face flushed a bright crimson. She stammered nervously before managing to speak. Naruko-san." Naruko tilted her head with mild confusion. "Yeah?" she asked gently. Hinata quickly looked down at the floor, her cheeks still rosy. "Hey, are you all right?" Naruko asked with genuine concern. "You look really warm. Maybe you should see the nurse?" Before Hinata could respond, a calm, quiet voice interrupted. "That won't be necessary, Uzumaki-san," said a boy wearing dark glasses. Naruko turned to see Shino Aburame, his expression unreadable as always. She is my teammate now, so I will ensure she is fine. Naruko nodded politely as Shino guided Hinata away. That guy's always so mysterious, she thought with a playful smile before continuing toward the courtyard. The courtyard was lively with chatter and laughter as students enjoyed the last of their lunch. Naruko spotted Sakura Haruno sitting alone on a bench and decided to join her. Hey there, Naruko greeted with a cheerful wave. Sakura looked up and smiled softly. Mind if I sit with you? Naruko asked. Sakura shook her head, motioning for her to take a seat. Sakura didn't mind Naruko, at least, not anymore. There was a time when she thought of Naruko as just a loud, overly ambitious girl who wouldn't stop talking about becoming Hokage. But lately, Naruko had mellowed out, and Sakura found that she actually enjoyed her company. So, how come you're sitting alone? Naruko asked. Sakura sighed lightly. Ino went to lunch with Choji and Shikamaru. Their families are close, and since they're on the same team, they figured they'd eat together. Naruko nodded in understanding. Makes sense. Speaking of teams, looks like we're with Sir Silent all the time, she said with a small laugh. Sakura frowned gently. Don't tease Sasuke-kun, she said with quiet firmness. Naruko smiled sheepishly. All right. No teasing. After a short pause, Naruko leaned back. So, what do you think being a ninja will really be like? Easy? Tough? Exciting? Sakura placed her food aside, thinking for a moment. I guess it's pretty simple. We train, complete missions, and help the village. That's the job, right? Naruko studied her friend's thoughtful expression and smiled. Sakura noticed and blushed slightly. Stop staring. It's rude, she said quickly. Naruko laughed, rubbing the back of her head. Sorry. I just didn't expect that answer. Oh yeah? Sakura asked, curious. What did you expect? I don't know, Naruko replied with a grin. Something like, a ninja is a tool for the village, or some textbook answer like that. Sakura giggled. I don't always follow the book, she said, pretending to pout. Same here, Naruko said proudly. They spent the next few minutes chatting about their exam, discussing transformation techniques and substitutions. Their conversation was cut short when a voice called out from across the courtyard. Hey, Sakura. You're missing it. Sasuke just helped a lost bunny. Sakura immediately perked up. Oh no, I have to see this, she exclaimed, quickly saying goodbye before dashing off. Naruko smiled and shook her head. Classic Sakura, she murmured fondly. When Naruko returned to class, the bell had just rung. Students began filing in, chatting excitedly as their instructors arrived to announce team placements. The first two instructors, one with bright red eyes and another with distinctive facial hair and a calm demeanor, introduced themselves and called their respective teams. Before long, only Team 7 remained unassigned. Naruko, Sakura, and Sasuke sat waiting patiently, or at least trying to. Naruko was beginning to lose her composure. She glanced at the clock. Their new teacher was already 30 minutes late. Seriously? She sighed. What's taking this sensei so long? Sakura tried to reassure her. I'm sure they'll be here soon, Naruko. Let's just wait a bit longer. Easy for you to say, Naruko replied. Even Sasuke looks irritated. Sakura glanced at Sasuke, who quickly looked away, pretending not to hear. Naruko began pacing around the classroom, a habit she had recently picked up. Sakura eventually gave up trying to stop her. Finally, after what felt like forever, the door slid open. A man with silver hair that stood up in a defiant spike and a mask covering half his face entered the room. His headband was tilted to cover one eye, giving him a mysterious air. He looked over the three students and said flatly, My first impression of you all is, I don't like you. Naruko blinked in disbelief. That's not very nice to say to your new students. She protested. The man didn't react. Meet me on the roof, he said simply, disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Sakura turned to Naruko. Now look what you did. You might have upset him. Naruko folded her arms. I just told the truth. Besides, he made us wait ages. Sasuke stood silently and walked past them toward the door. Naruko sighed. Well, we might as well go. The three made their way to the rooftop, where, much to Naruko's surprise, their new teacher was already waiting, perched casually on the railing. Ah, there you are, he said with an easy smile visible through his eye. You all took your time. They sat down on the steps in front of him. "Let's start with some introductions," he said. "What kind of introductions?" Naruko asked curiously. "Simple ones," he replied. "Tell us your name, what you like, what you dislike, your hobbies, and your dreams for the future." Sakura raised her hand politely. "Could you go first, sensei? Just so we know how to start?" The man gave a thoughtful nod. "Fair enough. My name is Kakashi Hatake. I have several likes, a few dislikes, and a variety of hobbies. I haven't really thought much about my future." The three Genin exchanged glances, silently thinking the same thing, that told us absolutely nothing. "All right," Kakashi said finally, pointing to the blonde girl. "You first, Blondie." Naruko smiled, ignoring the nickname as she began her introduction. Team 7's first meeting. "My name is Naruko Uzumaki," Naruko began, her bright blue eyes filled with determination as she addressed her classmates and their new teacher. "I like ramen, cooking, gardening, and reading." Her words immediately caught the attention of her two teammates. Since when did Naruko start gardening and cooking? Sakura wondered curiously. "I have quite a few dislikes," Naruko continued with a small, sheepish smile, "but I don't really feel like sharing them right now." Her expression softened as she looked toward the sky, her demeanor unexpectedly calm and mature for someone her age. "As for my dream, it's the same one I've had since I was little," she declared confidently. "I'm going to surpass all the Hokage and prove that I'm someone who matters." Kakashi gave a small approving nod. "That was a solid introduction, Naruko." He then turned to the pink-haired girl. "All right, you're next, Sakura." "Okay, my name is Sakura Haruno," she began nervously. "I like." Her eyes flickered toward Sasuke, and her cheeks immediately turned pink. I mean, the person I like is." Naruko sighed softly. "She's daydreaming again," she thought with a little smile. Sakura moved on to her goals but got distracted once more, stealing glances at Sasuke rather than focusing on her answer. Girls her age tend to focus more on their crushes than on training, Kakashi thought to himself with mild amusement. "And what about someone you dislike?" he asked. Sakura looked at Naruko for a moment. She remembered how easily she would have said her name before, but things were different now. Naruko wasn't someone she disliked anymore. Ino," she finally said with exaggerated energy. Kakashi hit a small chuckle as all the boys gave knowing looks. "All right," he said. "Your turn, Sasuke." Sasuke straightened slightly. "My name is Sasuke Uchiha. I dislike many things and don't particularly like much." Classic Sasuke, Naruko thought with a faint smile. Sakura clasped her hands together to stop herself from squealing. "What I have isn't a dream," Sasuke continued with a firm tone. "It's a goal, and I will make it real. I will restore my family's name and face a certain person." "He's so serious," Sakura thought dreamily. "I hope he's not talking about me," Naruko thought half-jokingly. Kakashi simply nodded, understanding more than he let on. Once everyone had introduced themselves, he spoke again. "Well, now that we all know each other, it's time for your real Genin test." "What?" Naruko asked in surprise. "But we already passed our test at the academy." Kakashi chuckled behind his mask. "Did you really think that was it? The test you took earlier was just to determine who was ready to move forward. The true Genin test decides if you'll officially become a team." The three looked at him in disbelief. "Only about 66% of students actually pass this stage," Kakashi explained. "The rest either return to the academy for more training or take on support roles." "What? That's so unfair," Naruko exclaimed. "The test isn't that difficult," Kakashi said with a shrug. "It's simply a survival exercise. Be at training ground 7 tomorrow morning at 5 sharp. And one more thing, don't eat breakfast, or you'll regret it." With that, he vanished in a swirl of leaves. The three young ninjas sat there in stunned silence for a few moments before Naruko suddenly slapped her cheeks to re-energize herself. "Well, whatever," she said with a grin. "No test is going to stop me. I'm going to become Hokage, no matter what." She looked at her teammates. "And you two shouldn't worry either. We might not be best friends yet, but we're a team now." Sakura smiled softly. Sasuke, of course, just gave a quiet humph. "It's not like I asked to be on a team," he muttered. Naruko ignored his tone and waved cheerfully. "All right then. I've got work, so I'll see you both bright and early tomorrow." Once Naruko left, Sakura and Sasuke remained in thoughtful silence. "She works?" Sakura thought aloud. Sasuke frowned slightly. Since when does Naruko have a job? I'm not sure, Sakura admitted. Sasuke shrugged. Doesn't matter. I'm heading out. Later that evening, as Sakura walked home, she heard a familiar cheerful voice coming from a small ramen stand. Curious, she peeked around the corner, only to see Sasuke already there, standing quietly outside. Sasuke-kun? She asked softly. He didn't respond right away. I followed her, he said finally. This is where she works. Sakura smiled a little. You're more curious than you let on, she teased as they both stepped inside. Welcome. Oh, it's you too, Naruko said warmly, now wearing a neat white apron. Sasuke said nothing, so Sakura spoke first. We didn't know you worked here, Naruko. How long have you been doing this? Naruko smiled proudly as she placed two menus before them. About 2.5 years now. I started out washing dishes, but now I can run the stand all by myself. This place looks nice, Sakura said as she glanced around. Naruko grinned. It's Ichiraku Ramen, the best ramen stand in the whole village. A tall man laughed from behind the counter. That's my girl, he said proudly, giving Naruko a friendly pat on the shoulder. Tuchioji-san, Naruko giggled. You don't need to hit so hard. If that bothers you, you still need more training. He replied playfully, only for a young woman to lightly tap him on the head with a pan. Father. The girl sighed. Be gentle. Naruko laughed. Thanks, Ayame Wani-chan. No problem, Ayame said with a smile as she helped her father back into the kitchen. We'll handle the next few orders, Naruko. Close up at the usual time, all right? Got it. Naruko saluted. Turning back to her teammates, she asked, so, what would you like to order? Sasuke handed over his menu. A regular miso ramen with grilled tomatoes. Coming right up, Naruko said cheerfully before looking at Sakura. And for you? Sakura hesitated. Ramen isn't exactly healthy. Naruko nodded understandingly. That's true, but we're ninja, we burn a lot of energy, so balance is key. Don't worry too much about dieting. Sakura smiled shyly. All right then. A small miso ramen, please. Naruko grinned. Excellent choice. And as the warm scent of ramen filled the air, Team 7 shared their first calm moment together, a quiet beginning to what would soon become a legendary bond. Not a problem, Naruko said with a bright, friendly smile. I'll be back in just a moment. As she moved toward the back of the kitchen to prepare their orders, Sakura and Sasuke sat quietly for a while. The silence was beginning to make Sakura anxious, and she found herself feeling rather silly for being too nervous to speak. Gathering her courage, she decided to start a conversation. So, Sasuke-kun, what made you follow Naruko? She asked hesitantly. Sasuke didn't turn to face her. I wanted to know where she worked, he replied simply. His tone was calm but final, and Sakura quickly realized that pressing further might be pointless. A few moments later, Naruko returned, carrying 2 steaming bowls. Okay. 1 regular miso ramen with grilled tomatoes on the side, and 1 small miso ramen. She announced cheerfully as she placed them in front of her teammates. Enjoy, she said with her signature grin. Both Sakura and Sasuke looked at their meals for a brief moment before taking their first bite together. The flavor was incredible, rich, savory, and full of warmth. Wow! This is amazing, Naruko, Sakura exclaimed, her eyes lighting up. Naruko smiled proudly, her blue eyes shining with satisfaction. Sasuke remained quiet but nodded approvingly after tasting the tomatoes, then continued eating without a word. So, Naruko, what made you decide to get a job? Most ninjas usually just focus on their missions, Sakura asked curiously. Naruko shrugged lightly. Well, you know how it is, she began. A girl has to earn her own way somehow. I do receive a small allowance from the Hokage, but it never really covered everything I wanted to do. Back when I was still in the academy, I didn't have any real way to make money. Her cheerful tone softened as she looked down at the counter. It's not easy growing up alone, she said quietly. For a brief moment, the air grew still. Sakura's expression softened with sympathy, and even Sasuke seemed to pause. But that's exactly why I'm here now, Naruko said suddenly, her enthusiasm returning like sunlight through clouds. I was tired of waiting around for things to change, so I decided to take action. With a small part-time job, I can start saving up and buying my own stuff. Both Sakura and Sasuke were surprised by how openly Naruko shared something so personal. Sasuke, who understood the loneliness of being without a family, felt a faint spark of understanding, though he quickly hid it behind his usual calm demeanor. "Oh. I see," Sakura murmured softly, unsure how to respond. The three of them finished their meals in comfortable silence after that. When they were done, Sakura placed her bowl down and stood up. "Thank you for the meal, Naruko," she said politely, leaving some money on the counter. "I'll see you tomorrow." "Yeah. We'll definitely pass Kakashi-sensei's test, believe it," Naruko said, punching the air with excitement. Sakura smiled and headed out. Sasuke stood next, giving a faint smile. "At least your cooking skills are better than your combat timing," he said, a rare touch of humor in his tone. Naruko laughed. "Ha! Maybe I'll name this dish the Sasuke special then." "Just don't be late tomorrow," Sasuke replied as he walked out. Naruko's grin never faded as she watched her teammates leave. After cleaning up the dishes, she glanced at the clock. There were still a few hours before sunset. "All right," she said energetically. "I'll clean up, close the shop, and then get some training in." Once she finished tidying and locked up, Naruko ran toward the training grounds with renewed determination. The cool evening breeze brushed against her face as she smiled to herself. "First, I'll become a Genin," she said confidently, her voice full of hope. "And then, Hokage, believe it." Dear YouTube family, that's all for today's video. If you enjoyed the content, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel for more updates. Thank you for your continued support. Warm regards. 6 Path Weeb.